I'd like to call the meeting to order. Jennifer, is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, there's a new item number 17. Please adopt the agenda at your desk.
Okay, is that number 17 on? Has that been
on
added?
The new agenda?
Okay,
yes.
So all the commissioners look at the new agenda that's put in front of you, if you would. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Motion second to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Need approval of the April 14, 2013 minutes or any changes or corrections at this time?
Move approval. Second.
Motion second to approve the minutes of April 11, 2013. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are now official. Council members in the audience, Council Lady Lancaster, you want to speak now? Or
Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak at the beginning of the legislation.
okay.
I couldn't finish.
Council Lady Allen, she's still in the audience? Okay. Is there any other council person? Didn't see you back there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's right. I came in late. Jason Holloman, District 24, 4210 Park Avenue. I actually have 3 items on the agenda. One has been deferred, the 46th and Utah project. We have another community meeting scheduled for this Sunday, so hopefully we will work on that one and bring it back to you May the 9th. I also have the Richland development on 54th. It is a piece of property that is now split zoned between commercial services and RS 7.5. It's currently a vacant church and 2 residential properties. The developer has worked quite hard to address some stormwater issues. It is part of it in the floodplain, immediately adjacent to the floodplain. I think has worked hard to reduce the impervious surface ratio, is providing an infill development that will be a nice transition between the commercial corridor there and the residential single family in the neighborhood. At this point, I think there are a few lingering questions, but on the whole, I think they have resolved all the questions with the neighborhood. We'll certainly continue the conversation as it comes to the council, but at this point, I know staff has recommended approval with some conditions, and those are conditions that I support, I think the neighbors support, so I hope you'll move approval on that one today. The third thing I would like to talk about is the Midtown rezoning. As most of you know, that area is immediately adjacent to my district. I have heard from a number of my constituents over time about that proposed upzoning. The density that is proposed, I think we all understand, and for those of you that were here when we had the Bells Bend discussion, I know and I agree that we have to find places in our urban core to add density. I support that. I do, though, however, think that we should do so in a way that provides design guidance and also in a way that maintains the historic fabric of the area. There are several dozen historic structures that are within this area. I had requested, and I know there was one community meeting held, I believe only one, to talk about the idea of doing something to preserve the individually National Register eligible structures. As part of this rezoning, that's not happening. I think that's a mistake. I think it's also a mistake not to do anything to address design guidelines. I know that this is the A category of zoning, which does bring you up to the street, but we did that in July. So essentially what's before you now is to upzone a number of historic properties and to add FAR to properties that were already rezoned in July. We did a good job with the downtown code, and we found that balance between providing much needed density and quality infill and still maintaining the historic integrity that makes those places interesting. You know, I had to observe on West End last week that we just built a 1-story EFUS AT&T building in this area. I don't think that's what we envision long-term for this area. And I don't think that we're going to impede progress if we protect what's historically significant and provide some basic design guidance. I think, in fact, what we'll see is that things get built much more in the way that we're seeing them in Germantown. I think one of our commissioners has been actively involved in seeing that area come along, and it's in an area that has an historic overlay, that has intensive design guidelines, and operates in a way that does both. It provides significantly higher levels of density than what we have today, but it protects the historic integrity of the existing structures there. I think that is entirely possible in this area, and I think that if we want to see this corridor turn into something that will support mass transit, that will add density to our urban core, but will be a place that has a high quality of life and that adds something to the fabric, not just of that immediate area, but supports the neighborhoods that surround that area, I would encourage you to not move forward with an approval of that bill until we address some basic design guidelines and historic preservation issues, similar to what we've done in other parts of the city quite successfully in the last few years. In fact, I think this is the largest upzone that's been requested in some time, and has done so without any design guidelines. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilman Davis.
Good morning, Commissioners, or good afternoon. Good afternoon also, fellow legislator. I come to you to talk to you today about the upzoning to commercial for the parcels on Chickamauga and West Eastland. I understand it's on a consent agenda. They worked very hard to get it here. We had a total of 4 community meetings, one official one with planning staff, but we met with the Cleveland Park neighbors and we met with the Greenwood neighbors twice. And each time, the applicant was very professional, very caring about my neighborhood, and I fully support it. The main thing now is let's get this to council so that we can get things moving. The area is growing, and I do appreciate the hard work that the Planning Commission has worked on this project with us and our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair McLean, Vice Chair Clifton, Secretary Bernhardt, and all esteemed commissioners. I want to just acknowledge a huge thank you to you for approving, also the planning staff, for approving 2013Z-009 TX001. The Metro Council looks forward to working with codes and the staff of codes in refining this particular piece of legislation and making sure that it addresses the trend of some rather I guess, difficult-looking lighting that is showing up in many other communities and neighborhoods here in Nashville. What this particular bill is trying to address is the distractive nature of the lighting over an extensive part of a business, meaning having lighting that covers the entire facade, the roof, the front, all over the business. And so this will help us to start addressing some of those concerns so that it's not a distraction to motorists and to neighbors who are adjacent to those properties. So I thank you.
Any other council members that have overlooked?
Mr. Chairman, just before we do the agenda, I just want to note for Councilman Davis and Councilman Holloman, we do have requests to speak on items 2 and 9, but they're all in favor, and so we're not pulling those unless someone that wanted to speak in favor wanted those to be pulled.
Jennifer.
Next, we'll address the items for deferral. There are 2 items for deferral today. Item 3A, 2013 CP-007-001. It's on page 6 of your agenda. West Nashville Community Plan Amendment. A request to amend West Nashville Community Plan 2009 update by changing the community character policy from urban neighborhood maintenance to urban neighborhood center policy for properties located at 132 and 134 46th Avenue North. Staff recommendation is to defer this item to the May 9th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. And item 3B, 2013 SP-012-001, 46th and Utah, a request to rezone from RS 7.5 and CN to SPMU zoning for properties located at 132 and 134 46th Avenue North to permit up to 3 residential units and office, financial institution, restaurant, and retail uses. The staff recommendation is to defer to the May 9th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting.
Commissioners, been a request for items 3A and 3B to be deferred till the May 9th meeting. Is there a motion to? Motion second to defer those items 3A and 3B to May 9th. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Items on consent.
We'll start with our legal notice. As information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. A notice to the public for the items on consent. These items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the Commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins with item 2A, 2013 CP-005-001, the East Nashville Community Plan Amendment. This is a request to amend the East Nashville Community Plan 2006 update by changing the land use policy from single-family detached in neighborhood general to mixed-use and neighborhood center policy for property located at 941 West Eastland Avenue within the Maxwell Heights and Greenwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay Districts. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 2B, 2013 SP-014-001, Eastland and Chickamauga. A request to rezone from RS5 to SPMU zoning and for final site plan approval for properties located at 904 Chickamauga Avenue and 941 West Eastland Avenue, located within the Maxwell Heights and Greenwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay Districts, to permit a mixture of uses including restaurant, full service, retail, office, and personal care services uses, in addition to single and two-family residential. The staff recommendation is to approve the preliminary SP and final site plan with conditions if associated plan amendment is approved, and disapprove the preliminary SP and final site plan without all conditions or if the plan amendment is disapproved. Item 4, 2013 Z-009TX-001. This is on exterior lighting of buildings and structures. A request to amend Section 1728-100 of the Metropolitan Code pertaining to exterior lighting of buildings and structures. The staff recommendation is that because the Department of Codes Administration takes no exception, staff recommends approval. Item 5, 2007 SP-037U-12, Forest View. The 4-year review of the Forest View SP to determine its completeness for properties located at 1444, 1446, 1448, 1450, and 1452 Bell Road. Approved to permit the development of multifamily dwelling units, commercial, office, and retail uses. The staff recommendation is that they find the SP district inactive and direct staff to prepare a report to the council recommending that the SP be retained. Item 6, 2008 SP-035U-09, 1201 Demonbreun. This is a 4-year review of the 1201 Demonbreun SP to determine its completeness for properties located at 1200 Laurel Street and Demonbreun Street unnumbered, approved for a maximum 24-story mixed-use building. Staff recommendation is to find the SP district active. Item number 7, 2009 SP-001-001, the Academy at Bellevue. This is a 4-year review of the Academy at Bellevue SP to determine its completeness for properties located at 7860 Learning Lane and 8236 Collins Road, approved for a daycare center for up to 175 children. Staff recommendation is to find the SP district inactive and direct staff to prepare a report to the council recommending that the SP be retained. Item 8, 2009 SP-014-001, Good Pasture Christian School. This is a 4-year review of the Good Pasture Christian School SP to determine its completeness for a portion of property located at 619 Due West Avenue, which was approved for an electronic sign. Staff recommendation is to find the SP district complete. Item number 9, 2013 SP-016-001 Richland Station. A request to rezone from CS and RS 7.5 to SPR zoning for properties located at 332 and 322 54th Avenue North and 323 53rd Avenue North to permit up to 40 residential units. Staff recommendation is to approve with the revised planning department conditions, which you can find at your desk, and disapprove without all revised planning department conditions. Item number 10, 2013 Z-012PR-001, 500 South 15th Street. This is a request to rezone from R6 to RS5 zoning for property located at 500 South 15th Street. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 11, 2013 Z-013PR-001. This is Hicks Road, unnumbered. A request to rezone from SP to RS80 zoning for property located at Hicks Road, unnumbered. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 12, 128-78P-001, Hermitage Business Center, Zaxby's. A request to revise a preliminary plan and for final site plan approval for a portion of the Hermitage Business Center Commercial PUD Overlay District on property located at 4115 Lebanon Pike, zoned SCR to permit the construction of a 3,847 square foot fast food restaurant. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 13, 2005 P-028-002, Heron Point, formerly Carillon. A request to revise the preliminary plan and for final site plan approval for Phase 1 of the Carillon PUD Overlay District on property located at Bell Road, unnumbered, zoned RM9 and MUL, to permit a 452 multifamily unit development, and final approval for Phase 1 to permit the development of 324 multifamily dwelling units. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions, including the revised stormwater conditions that you'll find at your desk. Item number 14, 2006-83P-001, McDonald's. A request to revise the preliminary plan and for final site plan approval for a portion of the commercial PUD overlay district located on property at 2499 Murfreesboro Pike, zoned R15, to permit the addition of a dual drive-through to an existing fast food restaurant. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. And under other business, item 16, employee contract renewals for Cindy Wood and Greg Johnson, and item 17, the capital improvement budget for 2013-2014 to 2018-2019. And that is the consent agenda.
Jennifer, item 15.
Been a request to pull that. We've had a request to pull item 15.
Okay. Okay, Commissioners, the items to be considered on consent are items 2A, 2B, 4, item 5, 6, 7, 8, item 9, 10, 11, 12, and item 13, 14, 16, and 17. There's a motion to approve those on consent.
So moved.
Motion second to approve on consent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Remember the audience, the two items that will be heard today, public hearing, will be item number 1, Midtown rezoning, and item 15, Country Club Estates resub lot 1.
I'm Catherine Withers. I'll be presenting item number 1, which is the Midtown Rezoning number 2. This item was deferred from the January 24th Planning Commission meeting. It's a follow-up to legislation that was before the Commission last summer that was originally proposed by planning staff as an implementation of a recommendation in the Midtown Community Character Plan. Before I discuss the details of the proposed zone change, I would like to step back and take a minute to talk about the Midtown Plan. The Midtown Community Character Plan update was undertaken ahead of the usual update of the larger Green Hills Midtown Community Plan, or Subarea 10, almost 2 years ago because of the investments and development projects that were beginning to take place in the area. The public investments undertaken in the area were the Centennial Park Master Plan and the 28th 31st Avenue connector. A major private project that had been approved in that time was the One City SP, which is a much anticipated medical tech campus that will be on the corner of Charlotte Avenue and 28th Avenue at the foot of the 28th 31st connector. At the same time, staff noticed that every new large development project either had to seek a zone change or a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeals. When these zone changes and special exceptions were reviewed, staff found that the previous plan for the Midtown area envisioned the urban character of the community correctly, but it did not anticipate the intensity that the market was now calling for. So staff kicked off a year-long process of meeting with the major stakeholders in the community and holding community meetings to develop a new community plan that was adopted in March of 2012. The three major goals that came out of the community input was an interest in supporting transit-oriented development, continuing the economic development of the area, and creating development of lasting value. The Midtown Study Community Planning Area is roughly the area within I-40, West End, I-440, and Charlotte Pike. The community character policy that was adopted is Center Mixed-Use Neighborhood, the purpose of which is to preserve, enhance, or create high-intensity mixed-use neighborhoods. And mixed use means the wide variety of retail, office, and residential. So this policy was applied in 3 different ways. First, along the West End corridor, which supports building heights of 20 stories and above. This is the most intense policy, and it seeks to recognize that West End is the primary corridor for the community. The second policy, shown in blue, is a slight step down in intensity, and though still mixed use, is in the 8 to 12 story range. It is applied with the Church Street corridor and out the Charlotte Avenue corridor, but also at Broadway West End split to the Broadway Division split. The third policy, shown in rose, was applied to the 20th and Grand, Elliston Place, and the area flanking Centennial Park at 31st Avenue. And this is a finer grain policy of 2 to 8 story buildings, mixed use, but emphasizing more a mix of residential and office. The zoning that was in place at the time of the plan update did not assist in the realization of the vision of the community plan. Much of the area was zoned core frame, or CS, and that is geared towards suburban and industrial highway-oriented development. Or in the case of the zoning around the hospitals, which was ORI, it allowed for office only and did not allow for retail as part of mix of uses. The zoning also did not contain development standards required to realize the vision of an intense pedestrian-oriented urban neighborhood. For instance, the CF zoning had a setback of 0, which is not the same as a build-to, where a build-to requires the building to be behind the sidewalk, where a setback of 0, the building could be behind the sidewalk, but it could also be behind several rows of parking. So what the zoning at the time allowed was what the picture on the left shows, the building behind parking, and the zoning that we need shows the build-to with the building behind the sidewalk, with parking to the rear or side of buildings. Another issue with the old zoning was the way height is measured. The old zoning specified a maximum height at the setback line and then a formula for every foot that you went back, you could go up a foot or a foot and a half, known as the height control plane. The new zoning is more concise about the form of buildings with a maximum height at the setback, or the build to, sorry, and then a step back to a maximum overall height. In the picture on the left, you can see that the height control plane is actually articulated in the Loews Vanderbilt Hotel. And this can make for inefficient floor plates with the wedding cake effect where your upper floors have to be smaller. Modern construction prefers the building form to be regular, like the image on the right. With all this in mind, the rezoning was undertaken. It included roughly the area discussed before, but Centennial Park and the Sportsplex were removed, as well as the boundary of the 31st and Long urban design overlay, since the zoning is already consistent with policy in these locations. 4 zoning districts were proposed with the new alternative zoning districts. Mixed-use intensive alternative, MUIA, is shown in purple. It's the most intense mixed-use district proposed, with a height of 10 stories at the street and a step back to a maximum of 15 stories. This proposal took in areas previously zoned core frame, that commercial industrial district, but it also extended down West End to implement that intense community plan policy. The areas in blue, mixed-use general alternative, is also mixed use with the full range of office, retail, and residential, but is slightly less intense with a maximum of 5 stories at the street with a step back to 7. Some areas of Charlotte Avenue saw a bump in development rights over what the previous zoning allowed, but the hope was to generate developer interest in the Charlotte Avenue corridor that may not have been there previously. The areas shown in orange, office residential intensive alternative, was mainly a switch from office residential intensive to office residential intensive alternative, meaning that there was the equivalent of uses in intensity, just that the regulation of building placement changed. All properties that were considered National Register eligible or National Register, meaning that they were already listed on the Historic Register, or other properties that historic staff designated as potential for a historic district were removed to allow historic staff time to work with property owners to assess their interest in historic preservation efforts. This proposal was approved on consent at the Planning Commission, but it was changed on third reading at Council. Most of the areas proposed for increases in development rights were dropped to a less intensive alternative zoning district due to concerns from neighboring communities. However, this change was not vetted among the property owners of the Midtown community, and many were opposed to the change. The District 21 council member noted on the council floor that night that she would be bringing her own legislation back at the request of her constituents in the near future. When the follow-up legislation was originally scheduled to be heard in January, the neighboring communities voiced concerns that no progress had been made to ensure the preservation of historic properties in the area. The request was then deferred for 3 months. During that time, planning staff and Metro Historic staff proposed an urban design overlay to preserve the scale and character of Elliston Place, and historic landmark overlay districts for all the individual National Register and National Register eligible properties throughout the study area. A community meeting was held to present the proposals. Opposition from a large number of the affected property owners was received, and in absence of a single property owner in support of the urban design overlay, and only a few showing possible interest in the historic landmark overlays, the proposals were unable to move forward. Metro Historic staff has continued conversations with a handful of the property owners who showed interest in the historic landmark overlays and hope to bring those applications forward in the future. An additional community meeting was held on April 4th, and the Midtown property owners voiced their support for the proposed legislation. which is to bump up those properties whose development entitlements were reduced during the first rezoning, and also to include several of the properties that had been removed from the original zoning due to historic concerns. Two of those properties that have been included, again, are National Register eligible, but the other 8 that have been added back in are either worthy of conservation or they are not contributing. They just happen to be between properties that were in potential historic districts that were National Register eligible or worthy of conservation. So most of those properties on their own are not contributing. So the request before you today, and the other properties that were, so we have the historic properties, but also an increase to MUIA at the edge of the 28th 31st Avenue connector to recognize that that improvement has been completed. The request before you today is to rezone from various zoning districts to mixed-use general alternative for 28.58 acres and mixed-use intensive alternative for 53.12 acres. Oops, sorry. This is a comparison of the most common changes happening to the majority of the area. First, an increase from mixed-use limited alternative, which has a FAR of 1 and a maximum overall height of 4 stories, to MUGA, which is an FAR of 3 and a maximum height of 7 stories, and this is mainly along the Charlotte Avenue corridor. Second, an increase from MUGA, which is the FAR of 3 and the maximum of 7 stories, to MUIA, which is the FAR of 5 and 15 stories, and this is mainly focused around Baptist Hospital. There are some combinations of MULA to MUIA, as well as between the non-alternative zoning districts to the proposed alternative districts. The key points of the proposed zoning districts are the standards that are the key elements from our previous efforts in urban design overlays translated into a base zoning district. They establish a build to instead of the setback, so we have an idea of where the building is going to go. Parking is permitted only at the sides and the rears of the buildings, not the front. Driveway widths are restricted to a maximum of 26 feet wide to keep disruptions in the sidewalk to a minimum. A primary building entrance must be located along that building facade in the build-to zone, along the sidewalk. Floor area ratio is calculated on before right-of-way dedication land area. So if right-of-way is dedicated for a wider sidewalk or for a turn lane or for on-street parking, that doesn't count against the maximum square footage allowed in a project. And bonuses are provided for reduced impervious surface area to incentivize the inclusion of green space and pocket parks. As staff wrapped up the community input of the Midtown community planning effort, we asked if the community would be supportive of a zone change, and the answer was yes. The recommendation to rezone to the alternative zoning districts proposed in this legislation was included in the community plan. The purpose of the zone change is to allow for mixed-use development so folks can live, work, and play all in the same place, and to allow for densities to support walking, cycling, and transit. To require building placement that enhances a pedestrian-friendly environment, and also to promote infill in existing urban locations because it is more cost-effective. The information provided by Bill Fulton with Smart Growth America on Monday night in the latest Nashville Next speaker series bolsters the Midtown rezoning efforts. Smart Growth America conducted a cost-to-benefit ratio analysis on 3 different case studies in Nashville, 2 in suburban locations in South Nashville, and then 1 in the Gulch, an urban infill project on the edge of downtown. The suburban projects were both around 180 acres, the Gulch being under half that at 80 acres. The value shown on the left of each pair is the revenue generated by the households within the developments to the city. The value on the right of each pair, shown in white, is the cost the city spends to provide services to these households, such as road maintenance, police, and fire service. The Gulch, with its dense urban pattern in the city center, vastly outperforms both suburban examples, even the suburban walkable neighborhood that includes retail and a mix of other residential types. The recommendations from Smart Growth America and Bull Fulton were that downtown and close-in neighborhoods are going to continue to provide a much higher return to the city. Village-style suburban development yields a higher return over conventional development. And the surpluses realized by these types of development patterns can be used to offset the cost of maintaining existing neighborhoods. And when infrastructure, like major capital improvements, like the Southeast Parkway that's been planned or the Harding Place connector, these trends probably become stronger with the in-town development being a much better value. And finally, as Nashville-Davidson County continues to run low on developable land, these considerations become more important. That last point becomes very important when you consider that Nashville is going to have close to 1 million people within the county by 2040, and Rutherford and Williamson County are also on track to grow at an even faster rate. So there will be 1 million more people in the region in 25 years than we have today. So where are we going to house everyone? Market research is telling us that people want to live in the city center. At the same time the general population is growing, the over 65 population is growing with baby boomers aging up. People are remaining healthier and active longer, and they're working longer, and they want to be in urban neighborhoods where they can walk or access transit to be near services and amenities and not have to maintain a yard. Coupled with this is the increase of one-member households, shown in green, and households who do not have children living at home, shown in red. This is going to drive demand for different housing products and more dense housing. And Gen X and Gen Y are demanding housing in vibrant urban locations, and we currently don't have enough to keep up with demand. The demand for new and different types of housing close to city services will dramatically increase in the coming years. The goal of the Midtown rezoning is to provide mixed-use development with urban design and densities that will support transit, walking, and cycling. With Vanderbilt University, the regional hospital concentrations, Centennial Park, and growing retail, residential, and office developments, Midtown is a unique urban setting, ready to grow more intensely and provide more housing, jobs, and recreation. The new development supported by this rezoning will bring much-needed revitalization and activity back to Midtown and will benefit the future needs of Nashville's residents. Staff recommends approval of this request.
Thank you, Captain. This item is open for public hearing. Council Lady Langster, I believe you wanted to speak first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman McLean and members of the Planning Commission, as well as my council colleague, Phil Claiborne. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I am Councilmember Edith Taylor Langster, councilperson for District 21, where most of the properties located are in my district, District 21. I hope that that's important for you to remember. In a few minutes, we'll make that clear. Initially, I want to thank Doug Sloan and Catherine Withers for all the members of the Planning Department for the time and effort they've given me for this rezoning. I have been involved with this rezoning for several years, and it's critical importance to my district and to the city of Nashville at large. It is expected that by 2035, there will be 1 million more people living in the metro region than they are today. Davidson County is predicted to continue to be a major employment center for the region. At the same time, more of Nashville residents will be over the age of 65. The demand for new and different types of housing close to the city services will dramatically increase. The goal of Midtown rezoning is to provide mixed-use development with urban design and densities that will support transit, walking, and cycling. With Vanderbilt University, the regional hospital connection, Centennial Park, and growing retail, residential, and office developments, Midtown is unique urban setting, poised to grow more intensely and provide more housing, jobs, and recreation in the future. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask you for the privilege of recognizing some, by show of hands, some of the property owners or their representatives that have come out in support of this zoning issue today. If I could, all those in support, would you raise your hand? Thank you. And I'd likewise like to ask a show of hands for those who are opposed to any change in the zoning ordinance. Would you raise your hand? Any change. As you can see, it's overwhelming support by the stakeholders who have visited with me with 2 community meetings and 1 by the planning staff. A community meeting was held on April 4th, 2013 to discuss rezoning proposal that is before you today. The Midtown property owners in attendance were supportive of the vision of Midtown and the proposed zoning districts and their standards. The new developments surrounded by this rezoning will bring much needed revitalization and activity back to Midtown and will benefit the future needs of Nashville, Davidson County residents, as well as District 21 communities. I support this rezoning on behalf of District 21. I respectfully request that, and ask for your approval also. This is good for District 21 as well as for the city of Nashville. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come to the microphone. Line up behind each other at the microphone if you would. State your name. You'll be allowed 2 minutes each.
Chairman McLean, members of the commission, my name is Tom White. I live at 36 Old Club Court here in support of this proposal. At the outset, I want to compliment Council Lady Langster. She's worked on this matter for more than 2 years, has attended every meeting that I have seen, both in the Planning Commission and her own held meetings, and in addition has fielded any number of calls on this particular matter. The 21st Councilmanic District has really been unbelievably hot for the last 5+ years. Some of the developments have been shown up here, but it's staggering to think of 1 million people in Nashville and in the immediate area, greater than that by 2035. You've also heard the comments about Smart Growth America, which is totally supportive of this type of concept. But again, it's been unbelievably hot. The interest has been particularly high. With respect to the components, the staff has mentioned those: transit-oriented, economic development, and development of lasting value. The Smart Growth America and the presentation by the staff just hits that right on. That's exactly what this proposal is all about. I attended, I think, every meeting that the Planning Commission had and the Council Lady had, and there was unanimous support from every property owner that attended that meeting in support of this proposed ordinance. I didn't hear one property owner in that Councilmanic District voice any opposition. With respect to a discussion of the UDO and historic, there was a very lengthy presentation done in a neighborhood meeting with the proposal, and frankly, there was not one resident or property owner in that area that supported it. I heard from the staff today that 2 or 3 people have since made contact that they would like to voluntarily work with historic. That can still happen. There's nothing that you'll do today that would prevent that. That's the way it ought to be. If there are a few and they're voluntary, let it take its course. The last thing that I'll mention is that as far as the proposal that's here and come before the council, it's what was there a year ago. Basically, a trial balloon's been done for a year. The report's back. It's unanimous support for this proposal as it is. Thank you for your courtesies.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Woods. I am Senior Manager for HCA Corporate Real Estate Department. On behalf of HCA, I stand in support of this proposed ordinance 348, sponsored by Councilmember Edith Langster. As most of you know, HCA is heavily invested in Davidson County and Nashville, and we have been for nearly 40 years. We have had an excellent relationship with the Metro government, and we are thankful for your leadership and your willingness to serve on the Planning Commission. HCA has approximately 10,300 employees that are working in Davidson County. We have around 320 employees reporting to work within the footprint of the area proposed for rezoning. HCA plans to increase the number of Davidson County employees by 2,000 employees by the year 2017. HCA currently pays approximately $19 million in property taxes and other taxes. In short, we are committed to Nashville, and we're committed to the Midtown area of this community. Councilmember Langster's proposed ordinance will promote smart development for an area that is ripe for our city to grow quality, lasting jobs, and support mixed-use development. The density provided by this ordinance is complementary to the city's planned growth and will serve as an accelerator in opening the Charlotte corridor. As a major landowner affected by this rezoning, HCA supports proposed ordinance 348. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, my name is Ted Cromer. I'm a resident of Nashville. I live at 4309 Belmont Park Terrace. As you've heard, the city is expected to add over 1 million people in the next 25 years. Those people will need a place to live, work, and play. Midtown Vanderbilt area is ideal for all of these activities, with Centennial Park, about 3 million square feet of office, hospitals and doctors' offices in the area, the Sportplex, and the proximity to downtown via the new BRT on West End Avenue. Much of the area is currently surface parking lots for the surrounding hospitals and doctors' offices. Higher density reduces urban sprawl and reduces automobile dependency. Higher density in this area would enable more residents to enjoy the benefits of Midtown living, working and playing in close proximity to their home. For all of these reasons, I ask you to please vote in favor of this application, and I support it. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
My name is Tony Giratana. I've been a developer in Nashville for almost 30 years. We have focused our activities in downtown area. We've done projects in Belmead, and most recently we've had the pleasure of working on 3 multifamily projects in Council Lady Langster's district. Including the West End Village at 31st and Long, Park Central at 25th and Brandau, and currently ongoing with the favorable vote by the Board of Zoning Appeals last week, a 105-unit apartment project at Elliston and 21st. The Midtown area has tremendous potential. There's a lot of undeveloped land in that area, or underdeveloped parcels of property. We are currently seeking additional property so that we can have ongoing development in what is Davidson County's most valued corridor, the West End Vanderbilt area. The proposed zoning ordinance will permit our future developments to be not just single-use projects with 200 apartments or so, but add retail components at the street and other components above in a mixed-use fashion, which is the type of development that we favor. The existing zoning on the properties that we developed did not. The proposed zoning would encourage the type of development that it's expressly written to encourage. And I would like to add my voice of support for the zoning and ask that you vote in favor of Council Lady Langster's bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Jimmy Granberry, CEO of HGO Realty Company, and we've been around well over 100 years in this city, and we commend Catherine and Doug and Rick and the staff. They did a wonderful job of shepherding this process, and the information provided today was very compelling. a lot of information I hadn't seen. I love the value adds on the different and the lesser cost to the city. We look forward to a development on our properties in this district if this proposal is approved, and bringing another quality development to this city that we've done in other parts of the city in the past number of years. So as our company, we support this wholeheartedly and recommend that you guys approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chairman. I'm Ronnie Winsler. I live at 1014 Woodside Drive in Brentwood. I'm here. I have my property owner and a developer in the Councilwoman Langster's district. We're doing a project on Charlotte at the old TDOT property, and we've been doing adaptive reuse around the city here for about 5 or 6 years, and have converted a lot of industrial, ugly buildings as they were, into interesting and useful offices, and we plan to do that at Charlotte as well. I ask for your support. I've been to I ask for your support for Councilwoman Langster's bill. We were at all the meetings, and the staff did do a great job. I did appreciate the same thing Jimmy said, the juxtaposing the cost of the type of development where sprawl happens versus where you get the density. Nashville has a lot of momentum now, and I think Midtown is the place to really have the city take its next great step forward. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
My name is James Talley. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say I've owned a property in this area for almost 30 years. It's a historic building built in 1920. I completely renovated it. I think when I first moved into this area, it was a blighted area. It was not particularly safe. I've seen over the years new development come and the areas come up, many new developments and one thing and another. I think this would add to that, and eventually I see a gleaming Midtown area that comes all the way from downtown all the way out. I opposed the historic overlay when we had our first meeting, simply because I don't feel like the buildings that were proposed in the overlay are historically significant. They're obsolete mechanically, structurally, in many instances, and I think a lot of the new developments are much more handsome with the retail below and the residential up above. So I support this rezoning, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Gilbert Smith, and I congratulate each of you for doing that job. I've done that myself. I'm an owner of some land in this area. It's old distribution land, and I'm glad to see the city changing it to mixed use, and I think it requires the density to make it really work. Thank you for your work.
Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition, if you come to the microphone.
I'm not sure I can say I'm in opposition, so it's good to come right in the middle. I'm Berkeley Allen, council member for the 18th District, which is immediately adjacent to the 21st District, and was co-sponsor of the bill that passed last summer, which basically said that we wanted to do this in a two-step process, that we recognized the value of the mixed-use change, and we recognized the value of the alternative zoning that brings in a number of design guidelines with it. And we also, I fully support the density. There have been many, many good reasons explaining why putting density in this part of town is a great idea, and I agree 100% with every one of those. We did feel like that it would work better in a two-step process where we went ahead and got design guidelines, mixed use in place, and then used the upzoning piece as a hook for additional design guidelines like facade and massing that often are included in an urban design overlay, and also to provide some incentives perhaps for affordable housing and for historic preservation. So when this bill was passed in last summer, August I think it was, we said that we would come back and can include this upzoning, and with it have the urban design overlay in place, which is what happened with the downtown rezoning. Typically, when you do this large rezoning, you have the community process, and the developers are engaged in the process because they have an interest in making that happen. My hope to you is that as the Planning Commission has committed to the UDO process, specifically in the areas around potential bus rapid transit stops, that process would continue to be a part of this upzoning. This planning staff has been terrific in this whole process. I can't thank them enough for all the hard work that they've done. And they have said they've been waiting to find out where those stops might be so that they could then decide where urban design overlays would happen. The pre-engineering study has come out. It has located those stops at 22nd. Can I keep going? I'm a council person. I'll talk fast. 18th, 22nd, and 27th Avenue. So we do know where those spots are. So I would ask, as part of this discussion, if we can talk about how to make those urban design overlays happen in a meaningful way when the upzoning part has already happened. I would appreciate some discussion from y'all on how we can be sure that as we apply urban design overlays to the areas that the staff has committed to doing that, that we are able to engage the folks who are here, who own property, who are interested in developing, I know, in good ways. But I think if they have the option to say, well, I don't like that, I don't think I'll do it, they often will take what works best for them and may not necessarily be in the interest of the design guidelines that we're speaking with. So I would just ask you, as we go through this process, if you can talk about how we can have a design guideline process in the areas that planning has committed to and that the council voted unanimously in support of, and that those would include additional design guidelines that are not included here. Also, to talk about housing density. In all the Nashville Next speeches that I've been to, they've talked about intensity and the benefits of that, but they've also talked about the importance of smart design and designing in a way that preserves the character of the neighborhood. And they've also talked about the importance of diversity of housing choices and housing price points, and that we don't necessarily benefit the city if everything we build costs so much residentially that our workers have to live outside of the city and are forced to commute back in. We want everybody to be able to live in this part of Nashville. So I think that there are things that can be done to benefit this, to make this project even better. And if you know a way to make that happen on the other side of this process, then then you're geniuses, and I'd love to hear it. But I think that's what needs to be an important part of this. So I do support the upzoning of this part. I just question the timing and would ask you that that you have some discussion on how we can make it happen so that as we talk about the urban design overlays that the planning staff is committed to, that those can happen in a meaningful way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Others that wanted to speak in opposition?
Hi, my name is Tom Cash. I live in Hillsborough West End neighborhood adjacent to this area, and I, as a Nashvilleian, I drive through and travel through and spend money in the businesses in this district every day. Like Councilmember Allen said, I'm not opposed to this increase in density. This is a great place for it, but without the design guidelines and some historic protections, I am in opposition to the way that it stands. There are many benefits to diversity, but these benefits are not a given. They're not automatically going to happen. It's not automatically going to be thriving and vital. But if we have some of these guidelines in, then I think it will be much more likely to be successful. It seems like a great area to increase density and to put in some mixed use. It's not currently a very residential neighborhood, so to all of a sudden make it a thriving residential neighborhood, to put a lot of to make it a residential neighborhood, I think that some guidelines make it more likely that it will be successful and great for the whole city. The promise of design guidelines early in the process. There were 2 community meetings that Council Lady Langster held, and at the first one, the guidelines that the planning staff presented were great, and I think it's unfortunate that was not a raising of hands at that meeting. At the second meeting without the design guidelines, there was a raising of hands. So I wish that we had gotten feedback at both of those meetings to gauge the success, the approval of those guidelines and historic protections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Hunter Moore. I'm a 30-year resident of Hillsborough West End, which, as you know, is immediately adjacent to the Midtown Corridor, and actually part of the Midtown Corridor is in Hillsborough West End. And I'm here to speak against this specific proposal because it does not include the design overlays that were initially proposed by Metro Planning and Metro Historic. I thought those were good plans. I attended both of Council Lady Langster's meetings, and I came away concerned that the voices that are being heard on this, the loudest voices, are non-resident property owners and corporate property owners who are interested in development. I don't think anything's wrong with development. I'm for higher density here. But I don't think we can expect developers to come out in favor of restrictions on what they can and cannot build. So forgive me for quoting, but the Planning Commission mission statement says, quote, "It's about preservation of important assets and, quote, distinctive and diverse neighborhood character," unquote. I believe these overlays accomplish those goals. For example, Elliston Place Village, which was the subject of the UDO, is a unique area deserving protection. It has part of Nashville's musical and cultural heritage. Icons like the Exit Inn, the Elliston Place Soda Shop. That area needs to remain a low-rise area. And another concern I have is really who you're planning for is future residents who don't live there yet, the thousands of people that we hope will come there, and the quality of life that they'll want and what will attract them there. So I hope you'll please think of the future generations of Nashvillians and the thousands of new residents we hope will call this area home. Right now we have a UDO in Hillsborough Village. I'm really pleased with the result working with Hill Realty for their new development in Hillsborough Village because of the UDO. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Margot Chambers, and I live in Nashville. I'd like you to disapprove this item, the Midtown Upzone number 2, for these reasons. There's the Metro Council Substitute Bill, BL 2012-195, introduced in September, and that required the Planning Department to manage development growth in the Midtown by using UDOs. It was unanimously approved by Council. The second reason is due to the recommendation of the Metro Transit Authority. Metro Transit Authority recommended to the Federal Transit Administration in February 2012 that because there would be environmental impacts to historical properties with the mass transit project, that the Tennessee State Historical Preservation Office needs to be involved prior to development to ensure lawful preservation of our city's treasures. The MTA report even has historical properties in it. This commission is considering whether to thwart the local government, the state government, and the federal government when it comes to mass transit and land development. Please don't do that. This part of Nashville is used by all Metro Council districts, and so to pretend that this only affects property owners in this little area is a little bit unrealistic. Please follow the agreement unanimously endorsed by the Metro Council to properly manage growth. Please do not develop Midtown until a UDO is in place with transit stops identified and approved by the state offices. Otherwise, I believe you will develop a major part of the city very poorly. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, is a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion second, close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Phil?
I have one question about the historic buildings. I guess I'm a little bit confused. You said that the historic structures had been pulled out, and then in one of the speakers, I understood that some of them were in. So clarify that for me.
That's right. Last summer, when the first legislation was filed, we removed 89 properties. The majority of those were National Register eligible. Some of them were worthy of conservation, or they just happened to be within a larger area that Historic had earmarked for a possible historic district, so they could have been individually non-contributing, but in between two worthy of conservation properties. So after the zoning was filed, some of the property owners who'd been involved in the community plan process were very dismayed to see that they were left out. So they asked, wrote letters asking to be placed back into the zone change. So there are 10 properties that are back in that had been excluded in that batch, 2 of which are National Register eligible. The other 8 are either worthy of conservation or not individually contributing. They were just within a larger area.
Okay, so the ones that have been added back in were at the request of the owners?
Yes.
Okay, so do they, if this were to go forward, that doesn't preclude the fact that they could do with that property, include it as a historic property or develop it as a historic, redo it, whatever.
Right. They could continue with National Register listing even with the new zoning.
Okay. And the other question I had, Council Lady Allen raised the question about a process, and I'm not sure if there is. I guess I'm asking, is there a process by which the design guidelines can be addressed after the fact, especially around the transit stops?
Yes. Some of the feedback I've gotten from the development community is that, well, first of all, the proposed zoning districts do not fully implement the density or intensity that the community plan supports. So there's that. And then also I've heard from the developers that they'd like more. So I think that there's still capacity out there, especially around the transit stops, for more intensity than what these zoning districts allow.
I think it's also, now that we have the transit locations, it is also our intent to work through those design guidelines on each transit station, yes.
Okay, so really, I guess, is what we're in here, we're still in an evolving process as far as this area is concerned? Is that a bad characterization?
No, I think, we're not done working with this community. We'll be continuing with the urban design overlays as the BRT, plans are finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Judy.
Thank you, and that was my concern. Council Lady Allen brought up about the BMR site, so it's good to know that we're taking those into consideration.
Hunter.
Catherine, is this bill essentially identical to the zoning that this body approved last year?
It's very close. There are a few changes.
Okay. And then the 2 National Register eligible properties, do you know what those are?
Yes. One is the Lentz Health Center that Metro is transferring to HCA, and the agreement was HCA could then build a new facility there. And the other property is a home that I think is on 22nd behind the Elliston Place UDO. It's by itself in the middle of the medical office district.
Okay, thank you.
Stuart.
This is it sort of is one of the more important things we've done, I think, as a commission. And I think it's probably been maddening to a lot of folks that it's taken a long time to be here, but I can see why it has, because it's pretty complex. I don't want to bring up old battles, but I will, to say that I think one of our most important decisions made in the past at the commission was the decision not to approve the Bells Bend development. And people still differ on whether we should have or not, particularly people in this room. And I think it's probably safe to say, though, that the reason we did not approve it on a pretty close vote was because of downtown and midtown and the potential effects it would have had, yes, in part on a very rural, seriously agricultural area, but also on what it would have done for downtown and midtown, which would not have been pleasant. We've been underzoned forever in midtown. And in that sense, I think everybody does agree with that. Even those who aren't really supporting this agree that we're not really, we need an upzone. It's not a bad word all the time. And I think we only voted the way we did on that other one because density belongs somewhere else, here. And I'm pleased to hear the quality of this discussion from opponents and proponents, because that's what they're saying too. I'm somewhat pleased to hear that the two areas are that are on the historic register that are back in, because you can understand in a way while they're back in, at least one of them. I guess I'm interested in what we have in our current. We've made so many changes in how we do zoning and what kind of overlays we have beyond historic and conservation. I'm wondering what kind of design guidelines, other than a UDO, we already have that will potentially help guide what goes in and what it looks like and what it feels like. Am I clear?
I think that you're asking what additional design guidelines would we be looking at?
Are there any things we've built into the zoning process in the last few years that will do some of what the questioners have brought up without further action by this body or the council?
The A districts.
The A districts. That's pulling the building up to the street at the Build 2 zone.
Okay,
and setting that Build 2 zone so that it allows for the sidewalks envisioned by the Major and Collector Street Plan, not just a 10-foot sidewalk that's there that may not suit the needs of a 15-story building, where today with a 1-story building it works. So there's that the parking is behind or beside the building. There's got to be a door, pedestrian entrance at the street.
Okay, those kind
of things. The basics are all there.
They're not historic or conservation related.
Right.
I've been trying to go back through history to think about what we've done on historic and conservation, and I've never voted against one, and they have made those urban neighborhoods what they are today. And had we not done it in the beginning in the 70s through the 80s, we really would have realized an earlier and faulty dream of city planners to essentially see nothing but development and non-residential development out to 440. But we did stop some of that with overlays. It's my impression that in every case we did that, and maybe I'm wrong, we had the support of the owners of the property. Not 100%, but I don't think we've ever put a landmark or a conservation overlay or a historic overlay on any piece of property without a substantial part of the ownership interest supporting it. Rick, do you remember? Or does anyone?
No, we haven't since I've been back, no.
I mean, we've had places where it's 75% perhaps and not 100%, but that's what makes this request a little unique. I know UDOs are different than conservation overlays, but some of what we're thinking as ways to preserve some of the structures, it's really not what we've ever done to put an overlay to put an overlay on when there's absolutely no support from any owner involved in it. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but I'm just thinking it through. I know I'm kind of rambling, but to me this is just a fascinating discussion, because I really do think one of the more important things the staff has done is initiate upzoning right here. It's important for all the reasons that have been discussed. It's important that it's happening in a district where there's support for it. and it's being supported by owners who have demonstrated in other parts of town that they can live with proper UDOs and proper overlays. I'm listening to the discussion more. I may come back with more philosophy, but that's all I have to say right now.
Jeff?
I think there's a reason that our peer cities are now envious of Nashville, and it's because of the hard work of folks like Councilwoman Lankster, our planning staff. We have to give developers a sense of risk and reward, and I think this upzoning and all the hours that you all have spent is a great thing.
Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Density has always been a real interesting subject, and I've had bouts with density being a suburban councilman and then now being a planning commissioner. And I think in some instances, density can be a really great thing. And in some instances, in Creve Hall, maybe not so much. I'm glad this is not a proposal in Creve Hall, but it seems that one of the reasons why I think so many people do love Nashville is because of its urban character and also the choices that people have. I make a choice to live in Creve Hall, but I also make a choice that I like to go down and visit Midtown, and I spend a lot of time there as a resident. And so in this instance, I think that the density is very appropriate. I've always been a huge supporter of walkable, bikeable sidewalks in Nashville, and I think that this type of density reflects that. And I also want to say that I also appreciate the planning staff and that we're going to continue to work on some of those TODs, those transit-oriented developments or around those particular stations, because it will warrant even more density as that project moves forward. I think that the main points for me that I'm going to support the proposal is because, one, it's consistent with the hard work that the planning staff has done in the Midtown plan. I think that it doesn't rule out any historical preservation. I think that the property owners have spoken, and we should listen to them. And I think my fellow commissioner brings up a good point. This could be a special instance where, an urban design overlay for this particular bill is not appropriate. I think that in the report, I think that if you want good quality tenants and good quality development, you have to move in this direction, especially for Midtown. And so from my perspective, I think that this is a very appropriate place based on all of the facts and the property owners. Also, I want to say that I don't think that it should go unnoticed of how much work has, like my other fellow commissioners have said, that the planning staff has worked on the issues of the overlay piece and also the historic piece. And I know that I think that my position would be different if, there was no discussion, there was no input. But you all have done a great job, the planning staff, in reaching out and working through that tough issue. So I'm going to support the proposal, and I believe that I've been on record in many instances in creating density in appropriate areas, and this is a very, very appropriate area to do that.
Andre?
Like everybody else, I think this is very exciting and appreciate everybody's work. I do have some questions, though. What were some of the design guidelines that were proposed that then were taken out? Just maybe, were there any?
There weren't any.
So they're not.
No, at the end of the community plan, when we proposed the zoning, we proposed the alternative zoning districts. When we gauged support to see if we could do the UDO or the alternative zoning districts, there wasn't support for the UDO, unless it was in conjunction with additional intensity around the transit stops.
I guess my concern back to developers' risk and thinking of the community too is if there is going to be some UDO and some more design guidelines that then it's unpredictable. So that to me makes me wonder if this is the right stage to put some of those things in, because if we pass it, somebody doesn't know yet what they can build because something more is coming. And that would be confusing, it seems like, for a developer to know, well, where do I stand? What can I really do? Or are you going to come back and tell me, oh, no, you can't do that because now we have these new plans?
Let me try to summarize this, because I think it's important both for the public and the commission to remember we got to this point historically through the use of a UDO or SP zoning. And after working on that in a number of years, we found out that there were certain key criteria, design criteria, that were important in those UDOs and SPs that probably should be part of the base zoning. And so the commission recommended and the council adopted the alternative, or the A zoning districts. And those A districts incorporate those basic elements: position of the location of the building, relation to the sidewalk, position of primary entrances, location of parking, all those things. And so we anticipated at that time, and we're hoping that what that would get us to would be all of the basic elements that need to be there. It's not to say that it gets every element, but it gets the critical elements in terms of urban design. And so what this proposal tries to do is utilize that base zoning and provide an economically viable option for development in there that's consistent with the plan. It doesn't max out the development is in there, but it says, okay, if all the development happens within this is probably going to be okay. This is going to work out. There's going to be sufficient density. It's going to support the transit. We do, however, have opportunities to, around the transit stations, to increase the intensity, which we are aware in discussing with different property owners. They really want to have more than what's there. In that case, I think we can look in and look at some of the key elements that are not part of here, which is probably to some degree your glazing requirements, your materials. If you're going into things like downtown, it might be an ability to put in affordable housing or other services that are over and above what's that in exchange for development and is over and above what is kind of a minimal sustainable level. So our recommendation kind of balances that. It's not, we don't view this as being the end all, but we also view this as the fact that we're not, quote, which we've heard, giving away the store. We think that there's still a lot of goods in the store that's wanted out there for a reasonable exchange for other public benefits.
Some of those things that you pointed out are some of the things I was thinking about too, is the encouragements for affordable housing and density. I mean, if it says 20 stories or more on the Western Corridor, that's a minimum. They have to go at least 20 stories. But if it says up to 12 or up to 20, it could be a lot of one story. So are we giving incentives for the density that we're asking for?
This is what I'm going to address that, because this doesn't address that area.
Right.
Yeah. That's not this zoning. That corridor is already dealt with. This is
I'm just using it as an example that where we don't say a minimum, we just say up to. Is this part of? Well, never mind. I think you've answered that. I just want to be sure that we're being consistent and that people who are trying to build there are going to know what they're going to get. I also had a question on Charlotte in the MUGA. Mm-hmm. In the staff report, I thought it said up to, and maybe I thought it said it was up to 20 stories. Is that not in the MUGA? It's the other section of Charlotte?
Charlotte,
what's it, the T5
the MUGA is 5 stories at the street with a step back to 7 stories. Or are you talking about the policy? The policy is the 8 to 12 story.
And then in the staff report, it says that the T5 MU02 is Charlotte between I-440 and I-40 is up to 20 stories, the maximum building height. I was just trying to figure out where
policy,
this is consistent.
This is, again, just to clarify, because we're talking two things. We need to clarify the policy in almost all cases allows more than what the zoning that we're recommending here is.
Right. So if somebody came along and wanted to change it, we might be able to allow it because the policy allows it.
Correct.
As things progress.
Right.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's see. I think that the creating development of lasting value is one of our goals. And so I think I can understand that if the public is saying, do we have design guidelines, or things really going to be of lasting value, we have to, I think the UDO will be very helpful in those cases. The other, I'm sorry to be on minor things, but the pervious surface encouragement, and notice it was for parks and green space. Is it also for surfaces? Like, do we give the bonuses for pervious paving or pervious? Okay.
We do.
And on the sidewalk widths, I just want to voice a concern that they're not automatically wider, because lots of times what makes a city fabric is walking on sidewalks where people are near each other, and if you have huge sidewalks, then it's a desert again in a different way. So ours doesn't say necessarily that the sidewalks have to be a certain width, or do they?
No, but the setback with the build-to zone for the building is at the back of the sidewalk that's envisioned in the Major and Collector Street Plan. And the streets within Midtown are a mix of T5 and T4 collectors, which can mean that they may have the full sidewalk like on West End. But then on the side streets, the sidewalk is a bit smaller.
So it's with
and
our
more,
street collector. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the sidewalks were actually, the street sections were designed to accommodate the intensity of the policy. So the street segments themselves are intended to be, in this case, pedestrian oriented. And so when any development happens, were this rezoning to go through, any development happens, then the sidewalk would have to comply with that.
Right. And when we updated the community plan, our staff updated the Major and Collector Street Plan at the same time, and we went out and surveyed all of the streets and actually put a lot of thought into what the ultimate right-of-way should look like.
Yeah, no, it's great. And then the last thing was just the green space. I mean, obviously Centennial Park is a boon. Are there any opportunities for us to reclaim spots and allocate ourselves some green spaces or little parks that would help encourage development as well?
Right. The area that is closest to I-40 has been identified in the plan as a open space deficiency area, and if there's more residential, then there's going to be a need for more open space there, and we've shared that with parks.
Okay, I guess the last part is something that one of you all said, and maybe somebody in the public, is that we want to be appealing to future residents, and so these design issues I think are very important. So I'm looking forward to hearing further discussion on that. But overall, I think it's an excellent, exciting plan.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval as recommended by staff.
Motion is second. Approval is recommended by staff. Hunter?
I'm going to support the bill, but I did have a couple of questions. With the alternative zoning districts, we added some standards. When we created those, we added some standards that aren't typically included in base zoning districts. One in particular, I guess, that I recognized was the entrance required from the street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, those are standards that aren't part of our other zoning districts, yes.
Right.
They are in parts of lots of places zoning districts.
Right, and so I guess one answer to Council Lady Allen's question could be looking at those alternate zoning districts and see if there are some other reasonable standards. I think the glazing along the street is perhaps my biggest concern. Of the property owners that are here tonight and developers here tonight that I know, I think they understand the value of creating an active streetscape, but not everyone does, and there are certain uses that could come along that would be allowed here that wouldn't by themselves lend themselves to having active street fronts. So perhaps there's a look at the alternate zoning districts and some minor changes or additional standards that could be considered. Obviously, that would be a text amendment that would have to go through council, but that probably most developers would be willing to support. And then the other would be, I would be in support of, any additional incentives for affordable housing. as well. Could I also go back, just for those of you who were not at the Monday night presentation, if you could go back to the cost versus revenue. I wanted to ask one question about that. On the cost side, yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. On the cost side, did that include all services that Metro provides?
This includes all general fund operating services that are covered out of the general fund. It doesn't include infrastructure or capital costs. It's all, so fire, police, public works, I mean, anything that's covered out of the general fund.
Does that include schools?
This did not include schools, I think he said, right.
Okay. So if you look at Bradford Hills and Lenox Village, those two developments are paying for themselves essentially for those services only, and all the other, more intense urban development is paying for all of the other services that are being provided for those areas. I just wanted to make that point.
And just to make one other point on this, it was interesting because he actually broke out the two suburban areas, Bradford Hills and Lenox Village, and in that slide, Lenox Village actually returned a net revenue, if that's what you want to call it, of cost over a revenue over cost of twice as much as Bradford Hills per unit. Right. It doesn't show up as well because of the scale here, but it is actually.
In that regard, you remember I believe it was Raleigh. He said there was a section of Raleigh, 7% produced 30-something% of the taxes that came just from 7% of the area in a built-up area.
I'd like to ask go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Council Lady Allen did raise a very intriguing and core question when she said, what can we do to further discuss the UDO process when the upsizing has already happened? And I think this discussion has sort of given some of the answers to that. I don't know about all of them. But partly, we've already done some overlay type things built into the A, what do you call it?
Or the alternative zoning district.
Yeah, right? Alternative zoning district. So that's part of the answer.
Which?
Wait a minute. Hold a minute, Stuart's.
The proposed zoning map?
Stuart's got the floor. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, let's see what she was asking for, because that probably helps me understand. Yes.
I think you want the list.
She's trying to help me. She knows I need it.
Okay.
So you know what I'm asking here.
The list of the district, the differences in the A districts, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The list that you, there.
This one.
Okay, you don't need to read them, but we see all of these, and so some of the answer is we've done UDO kind of things already in this plan.
Okay.
And the second is there's more to do because we're not matched out, but really, is it true that we're only not matched out relative to transit stops, or not matched out further than that? I guess maxing out is in the eye of the beholder or the council.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the zoning in any of this area reaches the maximum that the policy calls for.
That's correct.
Okay. So in that sense, there are those two answers to that good question, because I do think we're not going to see any conservation overlay if we approve this today. We may see UDO work, but not conservation overlay, and that may be what people are quite concerned about. In fact, we've never had much business, commercial-oriented conservation overlays, except in conjunction with an upzone. The lower Music Row, the Blakemore PUD, they're close to the village. All of that was great, but it was done only at the time of an upzoning. And I understand the position people are taking on that they're wondering what's left. So that's what I'm wrestling with, because I think frankly, I'm not thinking that the conservation and historic eligible places that are in this particular zoning are enough of a concern for me to override the need to go straight into this high density area. I think we need it. So that's where I'm going from, but I don't think we need to be voting thinking that, oh, we can have some historic preservation later there, because, you know, we may have UDO type preservation, but I don't think we'll have conservation or historic. And that's just something we need to be aware of if we're voting. I did want one last thing, and you mentioned in relation to the question down here about pocket parks, because that was brought up earlier. And that's really critical to a mixed-use urban area. Mm-hmm. Are you saying, Catherine, that we do have property under Metro control?
No, we do not.
So we would have to further that, we would have to acquire in some way.
Correct.
Okay.
I just had a question about that, because I think the historic question is your point, Stuart, but for the UDO, do we have a time frame so that we're doing something predictable and certain of when we're going to do the UDO, when we're going to next address the UDO, and have a goal for when we're going to have it, or try and have it proposed, so that we're not just sort of saying, oh, yeah, we'll do UDO sometime. You know, I think that if we're going to do it, we need to. Do we have a schedule already?
Well, the UDOs need to be done in conjunction with the finalization of the AMP line. So, I mean, I don't think that it's something we have to do right now. Plus, I mean, we're doing, and you'll hear, we're starting the UDO on Murfreesboro Road that we promised, and we'll probably get to it after that. I mean, it'll be part of the Nashville Next process, but right now, I'm not going to promise it. We're two people in our design studio short. Hopefully, we'll have those on in the next month.
2 people.
2, right, out of 4. So that's pretty thin. So, but we're in the process of hiring those. But I mean, we recognize the importance of it. We certainly don't want development around those transit stops to go forward without taking advantage of the. And I'm not sure that you've got many developers that want to. I think they understand the potential, and they don't want to underdevelop it. And that's kind of what those are right now.
I have one more question, Mr. Chairman. Is the Elliston Place strip included in this
bill?
Okay, thank you.
No, it remains with the zoning it's had.
And it wasn't included in last year.
No, it was not.
So that is an area that hasn't been upzoned.
Right.
And
that's correct.
Could still be considered for a historic overlay, potentially.
Potentially.
Or a UDO.
Right.
Okay, we got a motion, second to approve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're ready for item number 15. One. Maybe they left. This person's still here.
Judy's here. We got one.
He just gone to the restroom. Judy's here.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff's still here.
He's still here. Yeah. Hey, Jamie Reedy. Sorry. Hey, Jamie. Good to meet you.
All right, thanks. Hey, Monday was awesome. It was. I can't wait to forward the link.
Well, it's up. It's up now with the slides. So
I'll ask Greg if he can shoot it to us.
Well, it should be on our nationalnext.net speaker series. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, this is item number 15 on your agenda. It's a request for a final plat that would create 4 single-family residential lots.
Wait.
Excuse me, sorry.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Now we're good.
Now you can be dismissed.
Okay. We'll hit rewind and start back over.
Thank you.
Okay. This is item number 15 on your agenda. It's a request for a final subdivision plat, which proposes 4 single-family residential lots on a property or a site located at the northeast corner of McGavick Pike and RD Avenue. Here's a broader view of the subject site just to give you a broader context of where it's located in the Inglewood neighborhood. Staff's recommendation is approval. The subject property, which currently consists of 2 platted lots, it contains 1 existing dwelling, has an existing zoning of RS 7.5. It's residential single family with a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet. The proposed subdivision plat would create 4 single-family residential lots, each of those lots containing more than 7,500 square feet. The smallest lot proposed with the subdivision would consist of just over 7,900 square feet, while the largest lot would contain just over 11,000 square feet. There are several elements that are unique to this proposed plat. Including consolidated access. This plat would restrict vehicular access to all 4 lots to 1 location on RD Avenue. It would be accommodated through an access easement along the backside of all 4 lots. In conjunction with this access easement, vehicular access to each of the 4 lots would be restricted to or from McGavick Pike. This property does contain some slopes. Lot number 4, or the easternmost lot, has been noted as a critical lot, so that further scrutiny or review of proposed single-family residential dwelling on that lot would commence and make sure that what is built on that lot is sensitive to that slope. This property is also subject to a BZA application as it relates to the street setback along McGavick Pike. The applicants to the subdivision have a request to reduce the street setback on McGavick Pike from its current minimum of 40 feet to a requested setback of 30 feet, again, only along McGavick Pike. And it would apply to all 4 of the proposed lots. The street setback on RD Avenue is not subject to that BZA application. The proposed subdivision meets all of the minimum zoning requirements of the RS 7.5 zoning district. It also meets the subdivision regulations. With that, staff is recommending approval of the final plat subdivision with conditions.
This item is open for public hearing. If the applicants in the audience, they'll be allowed 10 minutes to make their presentation.
Press the button, now it's on. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jamie Reedy, one of the owners of the company that owns the property. We are, as Dwayne articulated, looking to subdivide the current address 1801 McGavick into 4 lots. Our intentions are to build 4 single-family residences in the neighborhood of 22 to 2,400 square feet. Throughout the process, we reached out to Councilman Anthony Davis. We went as far as to hold I wouldn't call it a community meeting because it wasn't addressed to the entire community, but there were a few members of the community who addressed some concerns and wanted some more information. So we did meet at one of the neighbors' homes with Councilman Davis and some of the members of the community to address their concerns. As you can probably see, and as Dwayne said, there are some challenges with the lot. It's got a sewer easement. It's got some drainage issues towards the back of the lot. It is sloped. We are currently asking for a variance from the BZA from 40 feet to 30 feet off of McGavick, which is indicated as a collector, to help with the design. We do not have, and at that meeting did not have specific plans to show them because some of the challenges of the lot dictate, issues with designing too prematurely. We kind of needed to see where that BZA process would go to understand what type of buildings would be there. But ultimately, it's like I said, it's our intent to 22 to 2,400 square feet for single-family residences. That's all I got.
Thank you. You'll be allowed 2 minutes rebuttal after the opposition speaker.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Avi McCrary, and I live at 1910 Riverwood Drive. I am directly across the street. If you see where it goes to a V, that's McGavick that goes north, and to the other side is Riverwood. At this juncture where that car is, there are 4 different streets that meet to that one area. So the traffic patterns in this area are very congested. The concerns that we had, as myself and the other neighbors, we invited to have the developers come out to my home so that we could discuss with them how we do not want 4 homes on this piece of property. There are a lot of reasons as to why we don't want this. The density, something that I learned today in this hour and a half that I've been in here. I discovered what that term meant when it comes to real estate. So we are not opposed to 2 homes being on that property, but 4 is just almost obscene. The property that would be where that common driveway is, I suppose, there's an 8-month-old baby that lives there. If 4 of these homes had 2 vehicles apiece, you're looking at 8 cars that would be coming and going out of that area that would be right up against their property. I feel that that's unsafe, not only for her, but for these folks that are coming and going in and out of RD. The shape of the lot is very irregular. The property that faces toward McGavick, it goes on an upward slope. So I can see why they're having to have the zoning for the setback. Myself and all the other neighbors are all for the infill. We feel that they would provide a quality product to be put in there. However, the quantity is what the issue is. I hope that you got flooded with the emails today of the opposition. And if you don't mind, I would like for you to read like David Fisher's email. He makes very strong points as to why we don't need this in our neighborhood. This area was developed in the 1940s, and as you know, if you drive around Nashville, and you can look typically at a neighborhood.
Please summarize, if you would.
This area would not support 4 homes that close together. It just does not fit what this neighborhood looks like. In that same spacing, on the opposite side of the street, there's 3 homes that fill that space. So to put 4, I think is just too congested.
Okay, thank you. You got 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to take it. Applicant. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, applicant then has got 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Just to speak, we do plan on having some buffer, by way of a fence from the property that's behind, and there is already it's a ditch, it's drainage. There's actually, if you were at the property, there's kind of a live well that comes up. It's not really represented in any of the stormwater or Metro Water Services maps, and it's pretty much a consistent stream. So you won't really see a lot of crossing over into the property right behind. And I can certainly understand issue with density, specifically for infill. But again, this is something that we did reach out to the community about, and up until today, we're unaware that we had any type of significant opposition. We came out of that meeting feeling pretty good. We had some design suggestions from the neighbors, trying to use some of the existing stone from the house, incorporate that into the development, making sure that the homes were oriented or positioned in the lots in such a way where we weren't utilizing the full width of the building, so they weren't just 5 feet off of the interior lots. So we're designing with those things in mind. There was some concern about the 4 in the very beginning, but it wasn't addressed to us as vehemently, or I'm understanding that you received some emails today that we just didn't have access to or didn't really get a chance to appropriately address that with the community. And we did have a letter of support from Anthony Davis. I don't know if you had a copy of that, but it was written and submitted during this process. So, thanks.
Thank you. Need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion second, close the public hearing. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Greg.
Why you always choose me first? It's either Phil or me. It seems that way. I'm just kidding. I'm on the end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chop liver?
Oh, sorry. Well, first of all, I want to thank the citizens for coming out and listening to our process and what we do. And you heard a lot about density. And, in this particular case, it's a subject of what, and that's why it's so important, I think, for citizens to get involved when you have planning, when you go through the neighborhood planning process and the zoning issues. And so a lot of times, until people don't realize what's going on in those community meetings, and I get that. So I'm going to listen to the discussion. Unfortunately, it meets the policy, and so it's hard for me to sit here and say, this is an appropriate density. I mean, it meets, on paper it meets it, but I understand your concerns about it being so dense. And I'm going to listen to the other discussion and see where I fall on this, but generally I would support the staff's recommendation.
Andre?
I feel the same way. I think maybe if there's some consolation in this that helped me understand it or appreciate it is the lot widths and the 7,500 square feet. And it seems like the lot widths are similar to lot widths along the rest of the road. And to me, that's in its favor.
Generally, that's true. The lot widths for this subdivision range between 60 and 72 feet.
And that's commensurate with some of these other lots along to the north, I guess.
It certainly appears that way.
So I think in that sense, it's not an alien shape or size as far as the rest of the neighborhood goes. I think putting the driveway, the single driveway on the side street is also helpful to the congestion issue of that big intersection. So and it fits the policy. I feel like it's something we can support.
Phil?
These, looking at the slide that you have up, these lots that are going to be created will still be within the RS7 category?
Yes, sir. The smallest lot proposed is 7,900 square feet.
Okay, so these are compatible. And then I had one question for the developer. Did I understand you to say that you had some question about the ability to add the fourth house on the upper end, or was it just there were issues that you were going to have to work with? I didn't understand that.
There's an issue with Lot 4 as it's presented. There's some slope issue starting from what would be the southeastern corner going down. Like he said, it is a critical lot, and it will present some challenges in terms of building, but you can still definitely get a structure on that building. It's just going to have to be engineered appropriately.
So your intent is to still put 4 there. It's not that you.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Judy.
Thank you so much. You mentioned something about a stream or something. Is there a stream? And
there's a drainage channel behind on the north side of these lots, but we've double checked. It is not a designated stream. In fact, there's no floodplain on the backside of this property.
Okay, and then the buffer, what?
So then there would be no applicable buffer.
Okay, thank you.
Stuart? Jeff? Okay. Motion.
Excuse me, one thing. I think I would also say did the staff say that they're in support of changing the setback to 30 feet instead of 40? Or is that our call, or does that have to go to BZA?
That's really a question for the BZA.
That's what I thought.
At this point,
Okay.
this subdivision plat could be recorded with or without the BZA's adjustment to the setback. If the BZA doesn't grant the setback, the variance of the setback, then just the normal RS-75 setbacks would be applicable here.
But do we speak to that at this stage at all ourselves? We don't. Okay.
Need a motion?
Approving, Mr. Chairman, the staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion.
One more thing.
Okay, motion second to approve staff recommendations. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything from the courthouse we need to hear about?
Getting ready to start budget hearings in the next couple of weeks. Good. And planning is up on the first group.
What is our day and time on that?
I just wanted to say, I do want to say, express thanks to Rick and the planning department for hosting the 2 breakfast meetings that you had, not only for the council but also for the planning commissioners that came. And I think for those council members who came, especially the one that we just had this past Monday, that there was a meaningful meeting for those folks that have the quarters in their district.
Thank you. Kelly, if you would find out the time that we go before council and date and email that to the commissioners. Rick?
Is it an honor that we're going first? Is that the way you interpret it?
Well,
probably work around. I think they were willing to work around our schedule, so we appreciated that.
It might be an advantage that you're going first.
A couple things I've already mentioned, that we do have 2 openings in the design studio. We're in the process of doing final interviews. Is that right, Catherine? Final interviews, maybe, hopefully. We've got a good applicant pool, and we think that we've got some good potential applicants. I also mentioned that next week we will have the community planning will have 2 public meetings, one at the West Nashville Police Precinct for a change in the land use designation of the West Nashville Police Precinct, because it is the old one, that's right. And that is Monday night, April 29th at 6 p.m. at the new West Nashville Police Precinct. Okay. And on the following night, I mean, we weren't going to let these people get any time off. So Tuesday night they were available, so they're going out to Murfreesboro Road and have a hearing or a meeting with the residents on the urban design overlay for Murfreesboro Road. As you recall, we kind of tried a sample of that overlay at the corner of, Murfreesboro and Pinhook, right? And that went through the council, and so the council members are interested in expanding that to a larger portion of Murfreesboro Road. So we'll have that, and that's Tuesday night, April 30th at Mount View Elementary School, 6:30. Nashville Next, just a couple of things going on that. For the nights that the community planning isn't out, we're out for the next 2 weeks. We're going to be at the Mayor's Youth Summit. We're going to be at Bordeaux Residential Community Meeting, Salvation Army Family Resource Center, Civic Design Center, Lunch and Learn, Harpeth Hall's Environmental Issues class, and Mayor's Field Day in the next 2 weeks. We have had just a couple of basic information. We've had almost 10,000 hits on the Nashville Next website. We've got a number of YouTube videos, including Bill Fulton's is now up. The last couple we've been able to actually get the PowerPoint slides and integrate them into the presentation. So if you look at them on YouTube, they're very viewable. We've had a very active engaged process on the open line. The last speaker will be a week from Monday night at the Nashville Children's Theater, May 6th at 5:30, and that's Amy Lou from Brookings, and she'll be talking about regional partnerships. The councilman already mentioned that both the breakfasts, I think they were very successful, both with Ellen Dunham Jones and Bill Fulton in terms of talking through that. We're not planning on doing one with her. It's not, I mean, we're looking at some other events that we're going to do with more of the regional partners and stuff on that. We can be glad to invite the commission to any of those, but it's more geared to some of Cumberland region tomorrow and some of the others. We've had very, very active involvement. I don't know, last 2 weeks, I think we've been to at least 10 or 12 different community events. I had the honor of being able to do a presentation in Chicago at the Form-Based Code Institute Code Forum and at the APA conference talking about job creation. So that's pretty much it for here.
Okay. Any comments from anyone that might make life easier for the citizens of Nashville?
I do want to pass out. I do have, before you click, I do have the Bill Fulton's report from Smart Growth America that he issued from the Nashville studies. There's going to be a larger report that's out there, but this is the Nashville component of that, where Catherine used some of the slides. The slides aren't in here, but we can. The information's in here, not the slides.
You stand adjourned. Thank you.
A lot of fun.